manga creation can be very weird. Writing and drawing a story on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly schedule is ridiculous. The amount of hard work and effort that goes into producing those chapters is insane. So of course you have a lot of help. You have an editorial department, you have a lot of assistants that you can hire, you have a lot of things that can alleviate a lot of stress and to streamline the process a lot more. This would be considered the norm. But what if I were to tell you that there is only one manga that does not do any of this, and somehow it is still officially published, officially recognized, and very much successful? This manga is genuinely one of a kind for its story, its artistry, its brilliance, and the author that is creating it, but also because of how it's actually created. Let me tell you about it. Chojin X is a manga by Sue Ishida, the author of Tokyo Ghoul. I've talked about this story quite a bit. It is impeccable. I absolutely love this manga. I love the story, I love the artwork. I think this is Sue Ishida's magnum opus, which might sound pretty daring to say when you have something like Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re, but there's a really good reason for it. This author has the genuine freedom to create Chojin X however he wants. And because of that, I've seen stuff in this story that he would not have touched in Tokyo Ghoul. Narratively, for his overarching story, his general ideas, and even his character work, to its artistry, how it's designed, how it's visualized, the uniqueness in each aspect is actually ridiculous. And the reason for that is because he has no help. See, Chojin X is different. It is a very weird step for the industry, but one that I think could be rather beneficial. Chojin X has no editors. It has no assistants. From our understanding and interviews with Sue Ishida, it has no help of the creation, of the art, of the writing, of the reading process whatsoever. That means the only person to touch this manga, to create this manga, to visualize this manga is Sue Ishida himself. And now what does that actually mean though? Because no other manga does this, because it's not technically viable. No business wants to produce this level of freedom for their authors, which sounds ridiculous, but that is the industry. So why give Sue Ishida his freedom? Why still officially publish him? He's writing it, drawing it, and creating it almost like it's self-published, but he has the backing of a legitimate magazine, the same magazine that One Punch Man is published in, which is a digital magazine. So why? A part of me believes, which is kind of copium, that the industry is looking at ways to give authors more creative flexibility and freedom, and if they are strong enough authors, they will be able to prove themselves with that level of freedom. Realistically, that is one way to look at it. Is that actually the case though? We don't know. All we can do is look at what Chojin X and Sue Ishida is providing us and go from there. Evaluate the things that are coming across and not coming across. And what can I say? I think the decision to write and draw and create the story this way has been one of the most unique reading experiences of all time. Unironically, there is so many layers to how this process works as a consumer. So let me kind of break it down for you. You don't know when you will get a chapter. You don't know how much is going to be in that chapter. You don't know how it's artistically going to look in that chapter. There's no consistency for this manga. And the funniest thing about the manga industry is that it's entirely built on consistency. A weekly story, you expect 18 to 21 pages of content every single week, which massively reduces the amount of artistic and writing creativity that can go within it. There is boundaries, limitations, expectations, etc. But you become consistent to that. Sunday or Monday, depending on where you live, you wake up and you read the weekly Shonen Jump chapters. Every single Tuesday or Wednesday, you read the weekly Kodansha chapters. If there's a bi-weekly story, you'll read that. If there's a monthly, etc., etc. It is a consistent, scheduled thing, and it works in their favor. The reason some of these manga are the most popular to begin with is because they're consistent. you might not have ever thought about that reader experience, but it's very fine-tuned. There's a lot of editorial work, there's a lot of assistant work, there's a lot of help going in to produce this amount of content this regularly, and that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with having assistants, there's nothing wrong with having editorial work, there's nothing wrong with having editors actually help and decide the type of narrative or story you're trying to tell. But what if I were to tell you that Sui Ishida with Chojin X that does not adhere to any of those standards actually produces more content? Very often, Sui Ishida will release 2 chapters that have the combined content of like 6 to 8 weekly chapters, and they're released very close to each other. And while it's not about the amount of content that comes across in the chapter, it's the amount of content that he wants to tell, and that is the biggest difference when it comes to the reading experience of Chojin X. Because there's no time that he has to publish, there's no amount that he has to adhere himself to. If he wants to make a short chapter, he can. If he wants to make a very long chapter, and what this creates is a unique reading structure and a very interesting writing structure. Now you are writing and drawing to the length of what you want to showcase rather than the length of the 18 to 21 pages a week. You actually have the room to tell what you want to tell in a singular chapter. Whereas on a weekly, you might have to cut that in quarters, or you might have to cut it in half, or you might have to not show a lot of things if you want to end it on that chapter. Endless amount of restrictions for the weekly experience, and it's very impressive how authors can make it work. I want to reiterate, this isn't a who does it better. Typical manga authors that are scheduled and under contract do a lot of work, a phenomenal amount of endurance to produce that amount of content that regularly. Sui Ishida also knows this. He'd done it for 10 plus years with Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re, a almost 400 chapter work, which is most likely the reason why he's writing Chojin X the way that he is. I'm just more surprised that they've actually given him the level of freedom that he desires to create the story without any help, to not have any assistants or editors or whatever to provide aid, and just to produce content the way that he wants to, artistically, narratively, lengthwise, pacing-wise, whenever he wants. You might think it sounds ridiculous, but he has proved over the last 4.5 years that it works, that it is one of the most beautiful ways to create a story and one of the most interesting ways to read a story. You might think, oh, you have to wait so long for a chapter, or you don't know when it's coming, yada yada. Surprisingly, Ishida is incredibly consistent. He may not have a legitimate schedule, but he is very regular, and the amount that he actually posts in those chapters is way more than a lot of weekly and monthly stories, and that is because he actually has a healthier schedule in comparison to others. Because he can create the story the way he wants and can release it whenever he wants, he ends up creating a lot more content. And that's the thing with a lot of these authors. If they were able to take breaks, if they were able to create the story however they wanted, you would still get a beautifully told story. You'd probably get even more of it. I don't think you'd be waiting any longer. These people are hungry to tell their story. If there is anything to take from Chojin X and its ability to produce the beautiful story that it's telling, the different amount of artistry that Sui Ishida has evolved into, like his style has transformed so dramatically, but also how he visualizes certain things within chapters is night and day. When he's talked about Chojin X and its creative process in interviews, he seems genuinely happy. Like he's able to produce so much, even days where he's done so much work already and he's able to live a life, able to go out and have fun or work out or play games or garner inspiration from places. He even live streams time to time creating the chapters. There's so much more personality behind him now compared to his earlier days. And it's not to say that other authors would have to have that personality or have to live stream or have to do this or that. You know, everyone has their own schedule and what works best for them. A lot of authors work really well within the comfort of restriction, right? But being able to take breaks and having a level of freedom to your creativity, I think is something the industry should seek, something the industry should evolve towards. And while I don't expect this max exodus of Chojin X-like stories to happen, I wouldn't be mad if a lot of more authors tried to do it. Horikoshi, the author of My Hero Academia, I think would be a beautiful example example and a massive step if he were to do a story like Choujin X. If he wanted editors and assistants, of course, that's perfectly okay, but able to create a story at his own pace and release it whenever he wants. For now, these type of free stories are not going to get the mainstream public attention. Choujin X has been pushed within the background quite a bit, but because it is Sue Ishida, the relevancy is still there. It's still selling, and it's not going to sell like the big dogs and Weekly Shonen Jump because they are so consistent. But I think if they started to push more authors down this route, especially more experienced authors that don't want to dive back into maybe a weekly publication or a monthly, etc., give them a bit of freedom. Let them create the story that they want to make and have a little place for them, the exact same way that Choujin X produces its story.